Yeah, I think what I'll first do before I'll backtrack a small bit, and we'll talk about an example program that should hopefully illustrate this sort of thing. If we imagine we have, we'll imagine it from the user's perspective. The user sees a little window that has a little text field with a number in it. So let's pretend it's a Windows thing or whatever. 3 buttons up there. So there's this text field, and it starts out at 0. And there's a button here that says +1. Now the implication, of course, is that if the user presses the plus button, that this will become 1. And if he presses it again, it'll become 2, and so forth. If we want to be really fancy, we could put in a minus button as well, but that'll be ludicrous at the moment. So we definitely have at least one object that we can see visibly here. We have a view, which consists of our three basic sort of components. The frame. Has anyone used the graphical frameworks in Java, the Swing library, or anything like that?
No.
Yeah, I'm going to try and not to be specific to that. It's generally across the board. It's more or less the same concepts all around. So yeah, we've a window of some sort, a button of some sort, and a kind of an output. It could be a text label, and we're going to change its text every time something changes in the program, or it could be any sort of text output at all. So we've kind of identified 2 kind of directions of data flow. Thing where the user clicks a button, and hopefully that action should pass down into whatever object is handling the computation, which in this case isn't particularly much. It's just incrementing a number. And then we have the opposite, where that object at the bottom needs to talk to the view to update it on what's actually going on, and keep it updated on the state of the number it's keeping. So if we say, this isn't really a calculator, but we'll call it a calculator. We could define 3 classes. We'll have calc model, which will have an integer for count. We'll have a calc view, which will have, I'll just call it a window, label, and button. If you were using the Swing libraries in Java, it would be like JWindow, JLabel, JButton, all that kind of thing. But pretty much any language you can name will have a framework of some sort to deal with graphical things, and it's all pretty much the same concept. But then we kind of come to the issue of how the objects are going to talk to each other without explicitly relying on calling each other's methods. So kind of in the middle, we're going to insert a controller layer. And the only purpose of the controller, it doesn't do any real logic of its own. It just interprets actions coming from the view and passes them on to the appropriate place in the model. So let's say you've got a program where it's some sort of user login kind of thing with a username and a password. You'll fill in the view object will take in the actual text of what the user types in. When they hit submit, it'll pass a message to the controller, which will take the text and whatever the text of the password as well with it, and pass that to the model. Now the controller will never actually do any of the logic of figuring out if the password is correct or not. That's the model's responsibility. And we can presume then that if the username and password are correct, the view will be updated with the appropriate thing. I don't know, it'll log into whatever program it is, or it'll come up with an error message of some sort. Yeah, so can I get this diagram up again? No, that's the wrong way around. Again.
So you will create each object into a separate one?
Yeah, we're going to keep them all as separate as possible. Obviously, because they need to work together, they can't be completely separated from each other. They have to rely on each other to some extent. But in object-oriented programming, it's definitely a good idea to minimize the direct connections between things, because you want to maybe, let's say even in this case, if we wanted to port this program to another operating system entirely, that for some reason didn't have any of the graphical framework that we've been using available to it. Like, let's say this was a Java application running on a PC, and we wanted to port it to Android. Obviously, we'd have to rewrite the actual view to take account of touch interfaces and stuff. But if we've done this properly, and we've kept them all nicely separated, we can reuse the entire model, and hopefully some of the controller. And the work of porting it becomes pretty minuscule at that point. Well, I say anything's due, but it'll take you 6 months to do it. Any questions so far on, before we start getting into actual kind of pseudocode of how we'd actually assemble this kind of thing?